And just a couple of housekeeping items, again, for those who joined us late. If you wouldn't mind leaving yourself on mute, we will have plenty of time for questions. We're going to try to cut this to 2 hours. It might end a little bit early, but there'll be plenty of time for questions that might push us up right into that 12 end point. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, so we're going to try to end as close to 12 as we can, try not to go longer. Okay, so moving forward here, here we go. So can anybody tell me what course this is? It's not going to be a test or anything like that, but just want to start off with, instead of a joke, a picture, because this is probably, if I ever got the chance to play this course, I think I'd be okay to retire from golf. This right here is where the Walker Cup is. This is Cypress Point over in Monterey. So this is one of the par threes. And for those of you who haven't seen this before, the tee box is, I don't know if you can see my arrow, it's over here. So you actually have to hit over the ocean, over this retaining wall here to get to the green. And I believe those of you that play the middle to back tees, the shortest carry that is like 208, something like that. So fun hole, scary hole. And depending on the day that you're there, might be driver, might be, 4-iron. So, but anyway, just fun fact, break the ice a little bit, if you will. But here is today's agenda, okay? So we're going to go over what's new. What is new in the world of WHS and the rules of handicapping? And what can we potentially expect moving forward? We're going to go over the USGA admin portal. How do we use it? How do we add a golfer? How do we subtract a golfer? And what does that look like? And then we're going to kind of go over more so the flow of the committee guide. So the way these bullets are lined up are kind of how the rules of handicapping committee guide is set up as well. So we're going to go over establishing a handicap committee, what the definition of a club is and why it's important. The fundamentals of the WHS, what is the expected score differential? I know everybody's favorite topic. Instead of net par when a hole is not played. We'll go over that. We'll go over score submission, 9-hole scores, how those are calculated now, and why do they, how do they create an 18-hole differential now versus having to wait for another 9-hole score to be posted. And then we'll go over some player scoring record maintenance. How do we do that in the admin portal? And then we'll go over penalty scores and adjusting a handicap index for those of you that are on the handicap committee. What buttons do we press? How do we do that? And then finally, we're going to round out with the new and improved tool, which is getting newer and more improved, handicap reviews. What do we need to do here? Why, or what can trigger a review? And what tools do we have at our disposal to use for that? Just so people aren't thinking they're being singled out. So without further ado, we are going to go over what's new. And that is enough of me for now. I'm going to kick it over to Maddie. Maddie?
Yes.
Oh, and one last thing. Whenever you see a gray slide like this, it'll be the next topic, but it'll also be a place where we stop and you can ask questions. My apologies. All right, Maddie, you're up.
Yes. So what's new? Congratulations to all the clubs in Colorado and Wyoming. They have all taken and passed the WHS exam, which is wonderful. And so no clubs will need to redo a quiz again this year. The next quiz that'll happen will be in 28 when the WHS rules change again or update, just so the USGA knows that everyone is staying up to date on everything that has to do with WHS. The only thing that we would love for people to complete this year is an assessment that the USGA sent out earlier this year in February, which we'll get more to in the next slide. But it is not spam. It is an email that gets sent out to you by the USGA that pretty much is just saying, hey, can you fill out your contact information so we know who to contact as your main person for your handicap committee chair. And then the other thing, which is exciting, is this USGA handicap review tool on admin portal, which I believe we'll hop into more a little bit later on in this presentation, but got some updates on that as well. And it's looking like it's going to be a pretty fun tool for handicap committees to use moving forward. So this club assessment. Again, it kind of looks like spam, but it is not spam. But every club must complete this, and it's possible that it could have been sent to you or to someone else or to someone previously in this position. Whatever they had last, and for that contact information is who it got sent to. So like I said, it got sent back in February. Some of the stuff might be pre-populated and they might just print like, yep, send it. It takes like 30 seconds to fill out if you need to change anything. But pretty much the big thing there is just to make sure that we have updated contact information for you. Just so if we ever need to contact you or reach out for anything, we know who's who and who's actually there. So we're not reaching out to old people, new people, whatever it might be. And then one thing that we would love for everyone to fill out is this club information form, which can be found on the Colorado Golf website. On this right-hand side where the club services is, a little box will pop up in a second, but it has a club information form in that right-hand corner, which is pretty much just saying, hey, this is our new contact information for X, Y, and Z, if any of that were to have changed. If nothing's changed, I don't believe it needs to be filled out, but it's definitely helpful for us for whatever it might be, billing, contact for handicap penny stuff, rules, whatever it might be. Definitely helps us in the long run with just keeping updated information to better help assist you in any way possible.
Perfect. And then the president and handicap chair are the individuals who we send the club insider to every month. So if those have changed and you want somebody else to get those club insiders, we do ask that you update those, because not only do I, but also our marketing individual who sends out these emails gets a confirmation when those are updated too. So if you want somebody else to get those, please update that information for us so we know who to send those to.
Perfect. And then we talked about this a lot last year in a few of the videos that we had. But anytime you see that red banner in the right-hand corner, that was a change that was done by the USGA for 2024. But obviously, we just want to continue to emphasize some of the changes that were done, just so we don't lose our spots. So the principal changes that the USGA did this past year was scores used when holes not played, the treatment of 9-hole scores, guidance on use of allowances, handicap review reporting tools, and then the new minimum length of golf courses. Perfect. And now over to Aaron.
All right. Well, before we continue, any questions about just a quick hitter of what is new in the world of GIN? I know it's very high level and the WHS, but any brief questions on that before we move forward? If you do, please either type it into the chat and or unmute yourself, and the floor is yours. Okay, perfect. I like silence. That means we're doing a good job so far. Okay, so the USGA admin portal, what is that? Well, the USGA admin portal is essentially GIN, the back end of GIN, the motor that keeps what we do and that keeps everybody posting scores and everybody's account information safe, right? So that is why everybody now needs an email and password to access any of that information. And the good thing about the admin portal is in order to log in, you have to be added as an admin first. And if you do have those accesses, because there are 3 different types of admin statuses, if you will, you would use the same credentials you use to log into the GIN app. So if you do get those, if you do get access to the admin portal, the backside of GIN, you would just use the same username and password you use for GIN. So pretty easy. But this is kind of what that initial login page looks like, right? Okay, and when you log in, you will be taken to this screen. This is known as your home screen. Here's our staff club, Bushwood Country Club. Many of you should know the reference there. And so when you log in, this is exactly what you will see. You'll see these 3 tabs here, these options above, all the green buttons, and of course your roster. And the only people that you will see on your roster are those that are active. You actually have to change the membership status down to see who all is active and inactive and or archived. Okay, but here's the big thing that I want to go over, because a lot of people get this wrong, and we do get a lot of phone calls around this time of year when clubs are starting to add golfers and things like that. There is a right way and a wrong way to add golfers. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the right way, and I'm not even going to go into the wrong way. Right? So there's two different types of golfers you can add. Golfers that have a current handicap index or have had a handicap index or a GIN number before, and a golfer who is brand new to the game and has never had anything before. So we're going to go over the first one, golfers who potentially have had a GIN number in the past. So simply click this Add Golfer button, right? You'll be taken to two options, and these are the same two options that we will get regardless of the type of golfer that we're trying to add. And one piece of advice that I have for everybody is, even if a golfer says, oh, I think I'm new to the game, I used to have a number, 10, 20 years ago, but, I'm starting fresh, things like that. So a golfer can only exist in the GIN system one time. So I will always recommend searching for that golfer, even if they don't think that their GIN number is active anymore. Okay, so what you do is you're going to click this left side here, search for existing golfer, and you'll be taken to this box, right? So you can either search by GIN number or email address if your golfer has that information. If not, you can always search via first name, last name, country that they last played in, or the state they last played in, okay? So again, I would do an exhaustive search, and by exhaustive, I mean, either one of these two options here to take a look to see if they exist before, because what you would do is then you would just reactivate their old account, and then even if it is 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, reactivate it, update any of the information that needs to be updated, and then once that golfer starts playing more, you can modify their handicap index until their potential and their handicap index match. Okay, so that's how you would do that. Okay. Now, adding a new golfer, if we go back to that initial first, essentially two option here, fork in the road, if you will. Now we're going to click this second button here, add new golfer. We have done our search, a global search in GIN. They do not exist in GIN at all. We are confident in the fact. Now we can click the add new golfer. So you will be taken to this screen, right? The grayed out areas are the ones that you cannot change, right? So Colorado Golf Association, that's the association we're in. Club name, that will obviously be your club name, not Bushwood. And just like anything else, the filters here, or the star blanks, are going to be the ones that are required. Everything else, if you have that, fine, go ahead and input that information. But if you don't need to add that. But just at minimum, we need first name, last name, gender, and email. Okay. And then from there, if you want to add phone number, you can, or birthday, you can. This would be particularly important if you're going to add a junior, anybody who's under 19 years of age. You definitely want to put in that birth date there. Okay. So super easy, two different options. Okay, that is adding a golfer. And one thing I forgot to mention, or that I did not mention on purpose, was those are golfers who have never been a part of your roster before. So if they have been part of your roster, there's actually an easier way to go about adding those golfers. Right? So the first thing you want to do, if the golfer was, say, for instance, active last year, but you inactive everybody all at once, now you just want to reactivate them, you're going to want to change this membership status to inactive. Okay, what this will do is, instead of showing all of your active golfers, it'll show all of your inactive golfers who have previously been on your roster anytime in the past. So once you do that, you can then search. You can either search by name for the golfer or GIN number, whatever you want to do, depending on how long your list is. You can scroll through them all. Oops. All right. All right. Okay. All right. So now what you're going to want to do, if you want to activate, in this case, Bro XYZ. We will just click the little box next to their name, and then see this nice little red box that's surrounding our green activate button. As soon as you check this box, these two options will illuminate. And of course, instead of inactivate, because they're already inactive, you're just going to click the activate button, save, and you're good to go for that golfer. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward there. So again, two different types of golfers: golfers who are new to your league, and golfers who have been a part of your league in the past but just need to be reactivated. So pretty easy. What you don't want to do, we won't even go over, because this is what I want you to do moving forward. You search them and you look for them first. If you find them, add them to your roster. If you don't find them, add them like a completely new golfer. This will also give them a new GIN number. And or if they were a member of your league in the past, simply search your inactive membership roster, click the little box next to their name, and just click the activate green button there, and you're good to go. All right. Now, a lot of people always ask us to add additional administrators to their club, but little do they know, once a user has admin level access, super admin level access, which most do. Some people have only certain duties for their clubs, but most of the people who can access the back end of GIN are have the highest access, and they can actually add additional administrators as they see fit. Right? How you would do this is you would click on this account tab here, and then you'll be taken to the club's account. So instead of doing this in a golfer's account, this is at the club level. So you would just go to the account tab, go to manage users, and then you would click this green button there that says add user. The only information you need is their email address, and if they are in GIN anywhere, it'll pull their account information in already, meaning first name, last name, email, and gender. And all you have to do is just select what type of access they need, and then save, and you're done. Then you added a user. Now, one cautionary tale there, too many hands in the pot. You definitely don't want something like that. So I would definitely not have everybody in your league as an admin, but there's no limit to the amount of admin you have. But I would definitely keep it to just whoever's on the committee of the club, and the professional staff as well, just in case, everybody's out on vacation and you need somebody at the club or somebody at the facility to go ahead and make an adjustment or something like that. So just word to the wise there. And with that, anybody have any questions on any of those processes? Those are your basic, pretty much 80% of what you will be doing as this role in your club. Okay, well, maybe not 80%. Maybe during this time of year, 80% of what you'll be doing, and then mid-season and at the end of the year, we'll go over what you'll be doing then later on in the presentation. But any questions on adding a golfer or adding an additional administrator? All right. Silence again, 2 for 2. All right, Maddie.
Perfect.
I believe we'll go from here. Ready?
One quick question though from Beth, asking what a membership code is.
So a membership code is essentially what the billing code is for us. So you should only have one and or two. It'll either be just a regular membership, a type R, which just associates the regular membership type with that individual. And that triggers the bill for $43 for that golfer, and or the junior. And if there is a junior designation for a golfer, that'll trigger the junior fee, which I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it's $21, $23, something like that. But yeah, so every golfer, that'll be required for them as well. Good question there, Beth.
Perfect. All right. Establishing a handicap committee, super important. So just to go over what the definition of a handicap committee is, the entity established by a golf club or an authorized association, which is responsible for ensuring compliance with obligations of the golf club or authorized association under the rules of handicapping. So it is recommended that with any handicap committee, you want it to have an odd number of people. Obviously more than one, because one person making all the decisions isn't great. But if you have any even numbers, then obviously you might run into some issues if you're trying to vote on things and it's even 2 and 2, 3 and 3, whatever it might be. So just making sure you have at least 3 members and it's an odd number, that would be great. And then the other thing that is important, and not every club can always accomplish this, but is making sure that if there's a professional staff that wants to be a part of the handicap committee, or if you're reaching out saying, hey, we would like for you to be part of the handicap committee, make sure that the professional staff sees it as more of you're asking them questions rather than them being a chair in your handicap committee, just to help keep things separate. And obviously the ones that are playing in the league should be the ones in the committee, just because you see everything on the course and what's going on. You have a little bit more eyes on everything rather than someone in professional staff might have. And then the last thing here is that your handicap committee should develop policies and procedures, especially in a document form, to be able to send to all of your members in your club that wish to establish and maintain a handicap index. And it's really nice, especially if you have that procedures and policies document already made up, that you can send it up. And if you ever need to go back and something comes up and you say, hey, this is written out, this is what we talked about, you did sign this document saying that you agree, so on and so forth. So it's super important to have something like that in place, just so you're not kind of going on a whim whenever something were to come up with a handicap rules question. So a little bit more on the policies and procedures. So the handicap community guide has sample policies and procedures that communities can use to help create their own, which is going to be found on our there's a few places you can find it. One is going through the USGA on their website, or 2 is going through our which is this guy here, or 2 going through the Carter Golf website. And when you're going through, you're going to go to the WHS, there we go, World Handicap System slide, or page, I should say, landing page. And when you get to that guy on that right-hand side, you're going to see the WHS Handicap Community Guide for 2024, which includes the updates that happened last year with the rules changes. So yeah, definitely highly recommend being able to go through that, create some sort of document, and just make sure that any questions that your players might come up with, you might have an answer for, just so you're not trying to get answers last minute for something that might come up.
All right.
Perfect.
That one was short and sweet and to the point. Any questions there on that one? Let's see, I don't see anything in the chat. Okay.
Perfect. On to the next.
All right, Maddie. Well,
yes.
Because it was so short, Maddie, you're up again. Perfect.
So definition of a club, going through those club requirements. So another definition for you, as determined by the USGA, a golf club is an organization of at least 10 active, big emphasis on at least 10 active individual members that operate under the bylaws with committees. A handicap committee is required. And then it also is to supervise golf activities, provide peer review, and maintain the integrity of the rules of handicapping. So 2 basic items that need to be monitored in order to maintain active status with the CGA, which is more so the USGA making sure that the CGA has all these clubs that meet these requirements. So this is a USGA required thing. But you need to have at least 10 active members on your roster. That is a huge thing, and you just need to have at least 10. So for some of our clubs out in Eastern Colorado, you only need to have 10 members on your list, but you don't need to put more than 10. You just have to have that 10 to maintain that club status. And then the other thing was of last year of members taking and passing the WHS Rules of Handicap test with at least an 80%. And it was just one person from each club that took the test. So it wasn't everyone taking that test, it was just one person. And then once you passed, you were good to go and had the green light to continue on being a club through the CGA. And then the USGA does quarterly checkpoints to make sure that all clubs are following the rules and regulations that they've put into place. And they do check each individual club. We do get a list from the USGA saying, hey, X, Y, and Z clubs are not doing well. Please do X, Y, and Z with them. So clubs that do not meet one or both the requirements for multiple checkpoints will be set to not authorized by the USGA. So if for some reason your club or you hear someone else's club go unauthorized, that is not us. We are trying to help you maintain your authorization. That is the USGA coming in and unauthorizing the club. And so that is that, which is lovely. And then, but this will cause all members that are in that league that have an active handicap to go to an NH until that club is authorized.
Yes, and then if this does happen, members will still be able to post their scores. They just won't be able to see a handicap index until that club is deemed authorized. All right, another short and sweet one. Any questions on that there? With it being the rules of handicapping now versus, the handicap system, just like the rules of golf, the USGA can be a little more intentional with their actions versus, recommending. So very important to maintain those two minimum requirements. Everybody here has already done it. And then kind of one note on that is everybody who passed it last year passed it for the club and not for the individual. So if there's somebody looking to take the test again who's new, unfortunately there isn't a new test link because technically every club is passed. The USGA is working on creating something that you can give to new individuals in this position during the cycle here of 2024 to 2028. But currently there is nothing out to test anything. So if somebody asks, we would recommend just have them go through our presentation last year that is currently up on the CGA website. And that essentially covers all of the answers almost in order to what the player or the new member of the committee should know. So, and we try to make it very obvious because again, the purpose of that test isn't to test people's knowledge like the 100-question rules exam. It's to make sure that people relatively know, should I say, what they are providing oversight for. So that's the intention behind the test there. So super easy, but you won't have to take it again as a club until 2028. All right. Any questions there? All right. Okay, well, 4 for 4, Maddie. Nicely done. Well, something tells me we won't be 5 for 5 here because now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of the presentation. So this is the fundamentals, or what you need to know being the handicap chair of your club or being on the committee in some sort of capacity at your club. Okay. So first thing is the minimum scores required to obtain a handicap index, right? Well, they're not really scores, it's just the number of holes now. So now it's just a 54 hole total, and that could be a combination of 9 and or 18 hole scores, right? So if you just play 9 holes, once you get up to 54 holes, the system will retroactively calculate a handicap index because now that 9 hole scores create 18 hole differentials, that's how you get that initial handicap index. Okay. And there's no time limit to completing these scores. So if there's a new golfer who still works, they will, if they play once every other week, whenever they complete that 54th hole and they post it, that next day will be when they will get a handicap index. So they will just kind of wait in their account until that minimum is met, okay? And just to kind of get a better idea of how a golfer plays for the committee in case they do enter a competition or something like that, it is strongly recommended for those golfers to enter holes hole by hole, because then that shows exactly kind of how they do on par 3s, 4s, and 5s. It might help you, it might not, but at least you have the data if you want it, okay? All right, now the next piece that you should know is the maximum handicap index any one person should have. And before it used to be, what was it, 38.4 for men, or 36.4 for men and 40.4 for women. Now they've gone away with it being gender specific, so now it is now 54.0 for both genders, which is awesome. So one of the main overarching things, if you joined us on any of my past presentations, is the WHS is trying to be more inclusive to every single type of golfer, regardless of age, skill level, things like that. So 54.0. Although I don't know if I'd like to play somebody who has a 54 one-on-one straight up with their pops. I might lose that one, just saying. Okay, calculation of a handicap index. It is, yes, a lot of people know that it gets calculated, but a lot of people don't know. That is kind of what you're there for now. And you will know if you don't know already. So in order to calculate a handicap index, a lot of people think it takes the lowest, 8 scores and averages those, or some people still think the lowest 10 scores, which that is not the case. So every time you post a score using all the data in the system, which is course rating, slope, PCC potentially, every score that you post creates what is known as a score differential. And instead of the scores themselves, the handicap index is based on, or is calculated based on, the lowest 8 score differentials out of your previously posted 20 scores, right? So this is what it looks like. So if you're in the admin portal and looking at somebody's account or your account, in this case, this is my account here, the stars on the left-hand side designate, or first thing you'll notice is there's only 8 of them, and that is on purpose. And those kind of designate the lowest 8 differentials that are currently being used to calculate this person's handicap index, okay? All right, in case you saw this and were wondering what that is, that's hopefully that's new knowledge for you. Okay, now here is the actual score differential calculation. Those of you who like math, this is for you. If you don't like math, this is still for you. You can screenshot this or do what you need to do to make sure that you have this kind of handy if you want to do some calculations later. But so a score differential is 113. That is also known as standard slope. And that is important here when we get into the expected score differential area. And then you take your standard slope divided by slope rating of the teeth plate. You take the sum of those two and you multiply that by the sum of the adjusted gross score, or the gross score from the golfer adjusted by net double bogey, minus the course rating of the tees played, and then minus any PCC adjustment if there were any. You do all the math there and that'll give you your score differential rounded to the nearest tenth, okay? Now, for those of you who have new golfers in your leagues, there is a safety mechanism built into centralized computation, or what we know is the handicap index. So because we technically don't know the full potential of a golfer who just posted 54 holes, because technically a golfer shoots to their handicap index 1 every 5 times, and technically 54 holes is 3 times, if you will, 318 holes if you do the math there. So that golfer may not have hit their potential yet. But if this golfer were to want to play in a competition, the system automatically reduces those initial 54 holes down by 2 points, just in case they do decide to enter a competition. And this is in order to protect the field. But then, of course, the more data that the system has, the less the system needs to do any adjusting. So notice as you increase the scores posted, you not only take more scores, the average of more scores, but you also get rid of any adjusting after 6 scores are posted. Okay. And this would be 6 18 holes. All right. So that's handicap index. Now, once we have that handicap index, we can now calculate a course handicap. And one way to think about the difference, or to think about a course handicap, is you versus the course. How many pops do I need to shoot my handicap from those set of tees, right? So this is the course handicap calculation here. You take your handicap index, multiply it by the slope rating of the tees you're playing, and then you divide that sum by 113, which we now know is known as standard slope. And then you add that to course rating minus par. And because this addition now exists within the course handicap calculation itself, there's no need to make any additional adjustments amongst golfers who play different tees. Okay? You can if you want to. The only reason you would need to is if those tees have different pars, and there's a section that we won't go into today, but if they have different pars, there is that additional adjustment for that 1 or 2 strokes, whatever the difference in par is, but that would be the only reason to do so. Okay. Now we have our playing handicap, right? And all a playing handicap is just what you just calculated as your course handicap, the unrounded course handicap, multiplied by any handicap allowance being played for that day. Whether you're doing an 85% of the total, 95%, 90, whatever the case may be, that's what the playing handicap is, and that's how it's calculated. So the difference between the two is a playing handicap is you against the players of the competition, and then a course handicap is you versus the course. All right. Somebody explained that to me a couple of years ago, and I always find that helpful. Know the difference. Okay. So here is what we calculated as our course handicap. We're going to pretend that that is unrounded. We're going to multiply that by 0.85 or 85% of the total, meaning that this golfer's playing handicap for the day is 13. Okay. And then, of course, if you, like I mentioned before, if you are doing a difference, playing somebody or having a competition where there are different pars, this is what the calculation would be: the course handicap times the handicap allowance plus any par difference. All right. Now, handicap allowances. There's actually a whole section in the rules of handicapping about handicap allowances. And there is a small, brief kind of update in 2024, but it did impact things. So, and that small, brief update is on 4-ball. This used to be 90%. Now it is at 85% for both genders. One of the big changes in 2020, if we go back a few more years, is prior to that, there used to be a men's recommendation and a women's recommendation. Now they got rid of that and made it one big recommendation in 2020, and it used to be at 90%. But now in 2024, based on the number of hole-by-hole scores posted and things like that, the more data the USGA consumed and has available to it in the amount of, you know, just a few million scores a year, they were able to determine that they, in order to make a fair playing or a more fair playing field, they wanted to adjust this down from 90 to 85%. Okay, that's one of the big, kind of slightly overlooked pieces in the new WHS as of 2024. And then here's some more. In 2024, they actually added a 2-player scramble, a recommended handicap allowance for a 2-player scramble, or for up to match plays. A couple different things there. So I would recommend taking a look at this if you're looking to kind of add any new games for your club or things like that this year. This will help. And even though these are in the rules of handicapping, you don't necessarily have to follow them if you don't think this will be good for your club. So ultimately, the decision is up to you. These are just here to help guide you on your journey of making a fair and equitable field. Okay. Now, those of you who have been part of the handicap committee for a while know that prior to 2020, there used to be an adjustment, but when there was a difference between partners, whenever there was four ball, right? Well, I won't read this to you here, but now you won't find any of that wording in the rules of handicapping. And why is that? Well, because when the USGA did that little bit of a haircut for both genders to 85%, there was no need for any additional adjustment based on the data at that time, right? So, but we all know, especially with large field sizes, 80, 90, 100, 120, whatever the case may be there, that might not be enough for an equitable field, or like even within your flights, things like that. So what we do, even though it's not written in the rules of handicapping, is we still do a difference in partners of greater than X. You do an additional adjustment of the higher player. You certainly have the freedom to continue to use that. Unfortunately, you won't see that wording anywhere in the rules of handicapping. You can still use it, you just don't have that wording backing you up if you do. But again, you're the committee. With great power comes great responsibility. So if it makes sense for your event and your committee, please continue to use that. You by no means no need to stop, don't have to stop using it. Just wanted to make sure that you knew about this. Okay. Let's see. All right. All right. Well, before we move forward here, there is a question from Shauna. Is it recommended, or is the recommended allowance based on field size at all? No. So again, that's why they are all recommended.
Okay.
The bigger the field size, the lower you want to go, honestly. But again, any kind of adjusting of those main numbers that we saw in Appendix C would be at the discretion of the committee. So you can certainly adjust if you see fit.
So can I just ask a quick question? So the general for individual play was 95%. So in general, if you have, let's say 40 people in the field size, is 95 the recommended allowance for individual play?
Yep.
Am I reading that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
And then the bigger the field size, maybe more you want to adjust. Is that the idea?
Correct. If everybody's playing everybody, but then as soon as you start, if you flight those golfers, then everybody's kind of in an equal competition amongst the flight. So it's really based on what you want to do there.
So in that example you just gave, if we are flighting and let's say we have 3 flights across 45 people, would you go with the 95 still, or would you go with 100?
Yep.
You would still go with the 95. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep, no problem, Shauna. Okay. Let me go ahead and re-add Karen back in here. Okay, so now we're on to the most likely score guidelines. So a lot of people, you'll see this a lot in match play, or when you're doing a 4-ball match play even, their partner is kicking butt on the hole and you just sprayed two golf balls out of bounds and you're like, well, no need for me to play the hole anymore. So there's actually guidelines on how to post that score or make that score postable for handicap purposes. Okay, and there's actually a table in the rules of handicapping that'll help us out here. Okay. So if your ball is within 5 feet from the hole on the green, then you would add 1 additional stroke, right? Now, if the player picks up the ball and it's between 5 feet and 20 yards from the hole, then just in USGA fashion, there's a little gray area and everything. Then you add 2 or 3 strokes, depending on the position of the ball, the difficulty of the green, and the ability of the player, right? So there's that gray area. Now, if the golf ball is beyond 20 yards from the hole, say in my case where I just sprayed 2 golf balls out of bounds, then I can add 3 or 4 additional strokes, again, depending on the position of the ball, which is out of bounds, the difficulty of the green, and the ability of the player. Okay, so again, there is a little ambiguity there, but you want to make sure that just because they sprayed 2 golf balls out of bounds doesn't mean that that score is not still postable for handicap purposes. Okay. Now, notice the banner again. This was one of the big changes in 2024, a hole not played. So before, we would just use net par, right, and call it a day. Net par, par plus pops. Now the USGA is really trying to get rid of that because that was just a blanket statement. And they want to use actual data based on golfers' previously shown potentials to fill in the blank, if you will, instead of just a blanket par plus pops. So a score from an incomplete round, again, I won't read that to you, but say you didn't play 9 or you played at least 10 holes, right? Now we can actually complete that round using what we now know as an expected score differential, but we need to make sure that the reason why we didn't complete those holes is valid, right? Now, what are valid reasons? Well, one, darkness or bad weather. Everybody doesn't want, people don't want to be out there when they're lightning, or, conditions like we had a couple days ago, just add a little rain to that, 50-mile-per-hour winds, things like that. We don't want to be out there. Injury or illness, a hole that has been declared out of play by the committee or the maintenance staff, such as, closing holes for new sprinklers or whatever the case may be there, and a match finishing before the final hole on the golf course, okay? So those are valid reasons for not finishing a round. Now, what is that, you ask? What are the invalid reasons? Well, let's go over those. Well, one, weather that does not prevent the continuation of play, like today's weather. Yeah, there's a little breeze, but today's a perfect day to play some golf and post a score, in my opinion, and the opinion of the rules of golf. Not playing a particular hole to avoid a high score. We all know those people, and we all probably have done it ourselves. I'm guilty of it. I'm not ashamed to say it, but moving forward, I just try to make sure, even though I don't like the score that I'm about to post, I need to make sure that I post that score for the accuracy of my handicap. Okay. Not playing the final holes of a golf course in order to avoid submitting a high score if playing badly, or a low score if playing really well. We all know that person. Like, oh, I'm playing really well today. Maybe I don't want my handicap to drop that far. I'm not going to post this score. Sound familiar? If not, I have definitely heard that a few times when I'm undercover out there, just playing on a fun play day. So that's always interesting to hear. And then any other situations considered unreasonable by the committee, of course. Okay. Now we'll go into expected score, right? So where the committee determines that one or more holes not played for a valid reason, an 18-hole score differential will actually be created for that score using the new term of the expected score for the hole and or holes not played, okay? Now here's a very busy slide. I'm sorry for that, but this is what the USGA gave me to present. But we'll go over this here slowly, okay? So in order to use the expected score, you have to either complete 9 holes and or complete at least 10 holes, okay, on a valid rating course. So if you start on hole 2, finish on hole 10, or finish on hole 11, unfortunately, that is not a valid rating, so that score is not postable. It would have to either be 1 through 9 or 10 through 18. So that's when you can post that score. Okay. Now, what exactly is an expected score? Well, the expected score is the score the player is expected to achieve over a specified number of holes on a course of standard difficulty. And what does standard difficulty mean? Well, it's not the course being played. A course of standard difficulty essentially creates a slope of 113, also known as standard slope. So now we have connected the dot there that we saw earlier in our 2 equations, okay? And it is calculated using the player's handicap index and attributes, or attributes a numerical value against any hole or holes not played during a round. Okay. And the big thing here that I want to emphasize is the expected score is based on an average score differential of the player with a given handicap index on a normal on a normal day among a normal distribution of scores. So it's not specific to a player, it's specific to the handicap index, okay? Or players with that same handicap index, what they have shown to score in the past. And we'll go over a lot of examples here later. I believe Maddie has a lot in the 9-hole area. But whenever somebody doesn't finish a total round or finishes only 10 to 17 holes, that score will now have to be posted using hole by hole scoring. You cannot post an incomplete round by total score. Okay, so let's take a look at an example here. Okay, so we have 16 holes played in this example from Jane. We're playing Sunnyside Golf Club. Her handicap index is a 16.0, and here are the ratings and the slopes. And here's what her course handicap is. So what do? She didn't play 17 and 18. The reason for not playing is valid. Say, for instance, it was bad weather or it was getting dark, so she decided she couldn't play anymore. So what happens here? Well, let's take a look. The first thing that happens is the system will actually calculate a score differential for the holes that were played, right? So because we have the front 9 data, the system will actually calculate the score differential using that differential equation that we saw very in the beginning of this part of the slideshow here, right? 42 over the holes played on the front 9. And it'll give you that value, right? And then what it'll do, it'll fill in the blank using the expected score based on those hole by hole scores. It'll create a rating and a slope for the holes on the back 9 that were played, right? And it will essentially add the front 9 rating and slope to the back 9 rating and slope to give you, instead of an 18-hole rating, a 16-hole rating and a 16-hole slope, okay? You can kind of see here what that is, 63.9, 125. Okay, this is done for you. No manual calculations need to be done. This will all be done by the computer on the back end of things, okay? And now what the system will do is then compute a score differential once all of that information is calculated and compiled and put together. And so the 16-hole differential for the holes played, again, is a 12.7 for Jane Smith, okay? And she just so happened to shoot a 78 through 16 holes, which is, she was having a pretty good day. Okay, now what happens is the system then adds that 16-hole differential to the expected score differential for the 2 holes not played. Okay, how is that calculated? Again, the expected score differential is calculated using a course of standard difficulty based off of golfers with her same handicap index of a 16.0, or what they had demonstrated to show what they could do in the past, right? Not on the course being played, but on a general course, right? Again, that's kind of what the red writing says here. And those 2 differentials, the score differential of the holes played and the expected score differential of the holes not played, are added together to create an 18-hole score differential of 14.8. And that can then be used for this golfer's handicap index if it were to be low enough, okay? All right, and so how it works, like how does the system come up with the rating? There is a little bit of magic. There's a little bit of sweet sauce. Just like the PCC, we won't know exactly the exact equation of how it works, but it is definitely based off of, you know, what year is it now? 2025. 5 years of millions worth of score data on how this is done. And so the slope rating for the holes played is calculated using a weighted average of the slope rating for the front 9, or the 9 that was played, and the slope rating and the number of holes played on the back. Or should I say that was not completed on the back. And so again, you can kind of see how that math was done here. And if you want, you can reverse engineer the equation to kind of figure those numbers out if you wanted to. But just know that you don't need to know how to do any of this. The system will take care of this for you. The only thing that you need to know is if you have a golfer that does not complete their round, they will have to post their score hole by hole. Okay? All right, and then in the scoring record, if you guys didn't complete a round last year, you probably will have seen this already, but you will see here that you will see, you know, everything is normal up until the score here. So this score with a parenthesis number is the score made through the amount of holes played. So she shot a 78 through 16 holes. Therefore, the remaining 2 holes were taken care of by the expected score calculation. And then the 14.8 is the differential that was calculated based off of that information. Okay? And then what are the benefits of this? Well, it is more consistent. Players will see more consistency than when they were using net par, which is essentially an umbrella, par plus pops, right? This is using actual data from players of the same skill level to kind of compute their score differential. All right. And this is because the expected score is not course specific or reliant upon the course's stroke index allocation. This is actually based on data and not the stroke index allocation. And it's flexible because for the first time ever, if between 10 to 13 holes are played, the player will have an 18-hole score differential versus not being able to post those scores, right? And then one thing golf has always been known for is it's always been kind of behind the times in terms of using technology and data to kind of do things. But now we're kind of seeing it not only on the professional side of things, but also on the amateur side of things. So by leveraging score posting technology to make this process simple and intuitive and not having to know how to do this manually, which would kind of be terrible, the result will be a more modern experience for the players, right? Okay. Before we move forward, does anybody have any questions about that? I know that there's not a question slide, but that is a big topic, and I want to make sure that we answer any questions. So I think Wendy has one topic. Wendy, good to see you virtually, and glad you're back safely. So how are those non-played holes posted? Non-played holes can simply be left blank. If they're left blank, the expected score will take care of it. Okay. Golf Genius. I get this one all the time. So I always forget the proper way to do it, because if you DQ or no show or no card somebody, if you have a season-long event, it'll take them out of that event, which you don't want to do. So I believe there's 2 different things to do. You can do here. You can set a maximum score for that hole in particular, whether it be 10, 11, whatever the case may be, but something that won't count towards the competition, but will count towards a ringer or something like that you're doing. You can do that. And or you can do the most likely score in X plus whatever the most likely score would have been. But again, that would be for a hole started and not finished. But for expected score, you can simply leave it blank and or put in a high number value just so that person won't be DQ'd from the season-long tournament or taken out of the season-long tournament because of that. So you might need to clarify what the Golf Genius is, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on those. And then for Golf Genius, yes, when score is posted through Golf Genius, if holes are left blank, Jen always kind of combs through all of those scores first, applies the proper calculations, and posts those, you know. So don't worry about the system not doing anything correctly. It has to go through Jen first before they actually get posted to the player's account. Hopefully that answers that question. And then finally, Deb, how exactly is most likely score entered when posting? The most likely score, I believe, is done by putting whatever the case may be. And for score posting purposes, again, you don't need to put an X, things like that, because you're doing it in the Gin app. You would just put in what their most likely score is. Now, if you're using Golf Genius, then that's when you would put the whatever their most likely score would be with an X, essentially signaling that they picked up on that hole.
That's confusing, Aaron.
Yes, I know. There's different ways to do it in Golf Genius, which is kind of a bummer. But the main way that I always see clubs do it is put the most likely score, so 5, 6, 7, whatever the case may be, with an X next to it. Hopefully that helps there, Deb. Okay, moving forward, how are we doing on time? We're doing well on time. Okay, so we are going to let the calculations begin. These 2 slides will be pretty quick. The PCC calculation, which was introduced in 2020. What exactly is the PCC? It is the playing conditions calculation, and this kind of takes into account the playing conditions of that day and or courses set up for that day. If the course is playing harder or easier than the rating that day, there is an additional adjustment to not overly affect somebody's handicap index. And the PCC is actually designed to be very conservative, although the USGA had to loosen it a little bit because it was a little too conservative. So if you haven't gotten a PCC in the past, and if enough people have posted on the day that you play, especially recently in the wind and things, most likely you might be able to see a PCC pop up on your account this year, because they have loosened the reins, if you will, on what it takes to get a PCC adjustment. All right, but it can only be 4 different numbers. It can either be -1, 0, or 5 numbers. 0, which most of the time it will be, a +1, +2, or a +3. Okay. Pluses means the course was played harder than initially rated, and a -1 means that the course played easier than rated. Okay. And then carry, that adjustment only happens if you post score hole by hole. That is not the case. PCC is applied either to total and or hole by hole. It does not matter. And the reason being is over in this slide here. Okay, so the PCC is only done once per day at midnight of the day of play. It considers acceptable scores submitted from golfers of both genders. It does require a minimum number of players to be kicked in though, right? And that is 8 golfers have to post on that day. And they all have to have a handicap of a minimum of 36 or below, right? Golfers with a 36.1 or above, their golf game tends to be a little more erratic, I guess. So I don't know where the number 36 comes from, but that's just kind of how it is at this time. But on bad days, a lot of people call in saying, how come I didn't get a PCC yesterday? It was super windy. There were a lot of people golfing and things like that. But the only thing about it is usually when a lot of people golf in bad conditions, they're not playing as well as they normally play. Therefore, they're like, I'm not going to post this score today. So when that happens, that unfortunately hurts the people who did play and did post, because they don't get the benefit of the PCC. So even if it is a bad day, please encourage your playing partners to post their scores, because it will be beneficial in the long run if a PCC is available. And it does include the 9 and 18 holes. All right. All right. Now, if you had an exceptional score, okay, now we're getting into some of the safeguards here of the system. An exceptional score is a score that essentially is, or calculates a score differential that is 7 or above strokes better than the handicap index at the time the score was posted. So there's 2 different numbers that you can get. So if the score posted is between 7 to 9.9 strokes better than the handicap index at the time the score is posted, that golfer will get a -1 adjustment not only to that score, but the previous 19 scores as well, essentially having a net effect of a -1 on the handicap. And then if the score posted is 10 or more strokes lower than the handicap index at the time of the posting, you'll see that the golfer will get a -2, not only to that score, but to the previous 20 scores as well. So let's take a look at this golfer here. So this is an example from 2020, but I liked it so much I kept it. So this golfer gets a PCC adjustment, or not a PCC, an ESR of -1 here. So it's, again, 1 for that score and the previous 19 scores as well. But then golfer plays, and then, oh, here we are again. The golfer happened to play really well. I would also be curious to know the score type here. Is this a competition score? Maybe, maybe not. But this would also trigger an ESR adjustment of -1, not only to this score, but the previous 19 as well. But then also notice these 4 scores here in the orange box. So not only will it affect these scores, but because there was already an ESR in place for these 17, 18, 19, and 20th scores, it'll double up for those scores only, right? So that would definitely affect somebody's handicap index. So, and then the one thing about an ESR is they are designed to be played out of. So yeah, maybe you had an exceptional day one day, but then for the rest of the summer, you play back to normal. So notice any scores posted after the ESR here, there's no adjustment to it. Okay. So eventually, just if you've been around for a little while, you know that the old system used to keep, a low round for 365-day period. Now that is no longer the case. Now, if you do have a low round, there is an immediate adjustment to your handicap index, but then you can play out of it. If you post 20 scores, it'll essentially be gone from affecting your handicap index. So one safeguard there. And then if you're in the admin portal and you're like, I wonder if somebody has an ESR, or maybe I want to take a look to see if I have an ESR. So if you go into your account, it actually has its own column. So you have your date score, course rating SOAP, PCC, which also has its own column, differential, and your ESR adjustment. Thankfully, I don't have one, probably because I don't play enough golf, but I am starting to trend the wrong way. But you never know, you might have one somewhere down the road. Okay. And then the soft cap, hard cap, right? So in 2020, the introduction, which was kind of being calculated by some clubs already, was the low handicap index. And the low handicap index is essentially the lowest handicap index a player has achieved over a 365-day period. And the reason that is important is because the soft cap and the hard cap use the low handicap index as a baseline. So the soft cap, which is a suppression mechanism, uses the low handicap index by essentially allowing the current handicap index to only go 3 strokes above the low handicap index in a 365-day period. As soon as that happens, the soft cap will kick in and essentially give each differential or each handicap index moving forward a little bit of a haircut, still allowing the handicap index to increase, but not increase exponentially like we saw in the old system potentially, or specifically before a tournament. Usually is when that happened, or that's when we would get the most phone calls. But then up to a certain point, at that point being 5 strokes above that low handicap index, the handicap index would then be known as hard capped, right? So that handicap index can no longer increase until the low handicap changes. Okay, so you don't need to know how to do any of this. I just like to show the math behind it. So here we go. So here's our example. Player A has a low HI of 10, and the current 8 out of 20 average is 15.2. And I apologize if you were with me during my Handicap 101 session. This is the same example. So if you know the math, this would be a review for you. So what you then do is you take your current handicap index and subtract the low from it. right? So that gives us a 5.2. Then you determine how much greater than 3 the result is. So how do you do that? 5.2 minus 3, simple, 2.2. Then the system will subtract 50% of that 2.2, which was 1.1, and add that to the 15.2 average, or should I say, add that to the handicap. So now this player's handicap index is a 14.1 instead of the non-capped 15.2. Okay, so that is a soft cap handicap index. Now, what does a hard cap look like? Okay, and we'll take a look at what this looks like in GIN as well here in a second. So here's our hard cap example. So this time the golfer's 8 out of 20 average is 17.4. You do the same steps as you do with the soft cap. One way to remember is you always go through a soft cap, or what I like to call a hurdle, to get to the wall or the hard cap. So you always have to go over the hurdle to get to the wall. So you go through the soft cap steps again, subtract the low from the current, and you see how much greater than 3 that is. This is 4.4 in this case. Then you subtract 50% of that from the current 8 out of 20 average, and that would be the player's handicap index. Is it? No, because now we know that a golfer can't go more than 5 strokes over that low handicap index. So instead of a 15.2, this golfer will actually be hard capped at 15.0, right? And the only way this can be changed is if the low handicap index is modified, or modified by the committee, and or is done naturally. Golfer just plays more golf and, you know, slowly plays out of the hard cap. So with that, that was a lot there. Are there any questions about the fundamentals? We started from everything new all the way to the safeguards. Any questions there? I know that was a lot. Hopefully I answered all the questions in the chat. Okay, how are we doing on time there, Maddie? I think we're doing good. Okay. Let me see here. There are no questions. Maddie, take it away.
Perfect. So score submission. So talking about the maximum score for handicap purposes, so net double bogey, which is the maximum hole score for players, a player's maximum hole score for handicap purposes. And so going over that, the net double bogey, so net double bogey is par plus 2, plus or minus any handicap strokes received or given. So looking down below, so if you have par, like if you're playing a par 4, par is 4 for the par 4, and then you'd add 2 strokes, which is the double bogey. And then if there's any strokes received on the hole, so if you get a pop, one might understand more as a pop, your max score you could get on that hole is a 7.
And another way you could think of it too, which is a little easier to explain to your golfers, is double bogey plus. Take double bogey on that hole, plus any pops.
So going over an example here, here we have Kate playing in the Virtual Country Club, or playing at Virtual Country Club for the 2025 WHS Invitational, and going through her scorecard here for the front 9, you can see on hole number 1 to par 4, and she scored a 4, so no changes would be done there. Next hole is a par 3. She got a bogey on that guy, so no changes there because she wasn't over that double bogey score. Then you see par 5 on 9, or sorry, hole number 3, par 5. She got a 9 on that hole, so there's a little asterisk next to there that we're going to come back to that guy. And then so on and so forth. You can see down the line she's doing well, and then number 7, another par 5, she scores a 9. So the overall score for that front 9 is going to be a 46, which is used for any event that she's in. Tournament score, that is the number that you use, but her posting score is going to look a little bit different in Gin. So as you can see here, number 3, that 9 got X'd out. So with that, we're going to take a look. So par is 5 plus a double bogey, which gets her up to a 7. And then there is a pop that she got on the hole, or a stroke. So that means that her highest score that she can get on that hole is an 8. Perfect. And then going forward, she's fine. Then you get to number 7 again, par 5, where she got a 9. For tournament posting purposes, you have the 5 plus the 2 strokes to get the double. And then there's the pop there. So then an 8 would be her posting score. So her total posting score is actually going to be a 44 that goes into Gin. And the nice thing about this is that Gin will actually automatically do this process for you. So you don't have to sit down and go through and actually rewrite out, oh, this one's actually this one's actually that. There is a system in there that'll do it for you. But going forward, so if your course handicap is above an 18, so between 19 and 36, going through, you'll do the net double bogey. And so looking here, you have par 4 with a pop. So it's actually going to be a 7. So you have the 4 plus the 2 to get the double bogey is a 6, plus the pop is a 7. And then going forward, we'll look at hole number 3 as it has 2 pops there. So you have 5. Double bogey is going to make you up to a 7, plus 2 pops will get you actually up to a 9. And then going down the line here, 4 will get you a 7. 4 again will get you another 7. 3 with a 3 maintains a 3, so nothing changes there for that player. Then we have another 5 where she got a 10 again. So that will be entered in as a 9 with that double bogey or the double pop on that hole. And then so on and so forth. 4, she'll have another 7 again. And then on the last hole, which is a par 4, with the double bogeys a 6, you get the plus 2. And then another 2 with the 2 pops, which gets you an 8. So then her actual posted score is actually a 61 rather than the 68 used for the event score. Perfect. So if the golfer does not have an established handicap index, the maximum score that can be posted when establishing the index will be par plus 5, meaning 5 strokes. So the accessibility or acceptability of the scores. So scores from an authorized format of play which meets all the provisions set out within the rules of handicapping. And then, so that would be like formats of play that are like if they're playing in a scramble or anything like that, that's not necessarily acceptable. But if it's stroke play or anything like that, that's more acceptable, or that is acceptable, I should say. Scores in both match play and stroke play, including multi-ball or team competitions where a player have not completed 1 or more holes, or players are requested to pick up when out of contention on a hole. And the last one here is scores on all courses with the current course rating and slope rating made during an active season, both at home and away. Perfect. And so then scores made under the rules of golf and the modified rules of golf for players with disabilities. You have to be able, or you need to play with one person that can attest to the score that you shot. And then you need to follow, or when players follow model local rules, even if the committee has not adopted it. For an example, alternative option to stroke and distance or preferred lies. So then here's a few unacceptable scores when that would not be able to be posted. So a score is not acceptable for handicap purposes and must not be posted to a player's scoring record if a player has been disqualified from a competition for a breach of the rules of golf that might have provided the player with a significant advantage, like using a non-conforming club. And then some other examples really quick. Foursomes, so like the one where you're playing a scramble or alternate shot, and then one where you are being coached out on the course. And then moving forward here, so a 9-hole example for a player with a 10 handicap index playing from the bronze tees with a 36.0 and a 125 course rating and slope. So just looking at the score differential for this guy, since this was a change for 2024. So you have your 9-hole score differential, and then you will take your 9-hole score differential equals the 113 divided by, move forward. 913 divided by the 9-hole slope rating, which is at 125, multiplied by your adjusted gross score, which is a 42, minus the current course rating for that course, so 36, and then any PCC adjustment, or half PCC adjustment, I should say, which was there was no PCC adjustment, which equaled a 5.42 for that front 9 score differential. And so then looking at that with how an 18-hole score differential would be calculated, it's calculated by combining the 9-hole score differential from the 9 holes played with the expected score differential for the holes not played. So calculated based on a given handicap index on a course of standard difficulty. And this is strictly based off of a handicap index of a 10 for this person. Obviously, it would change with higher or lower handicap indexes. And one thing to really point out here is that when you are playing a course and you only play the front 9 and an expected 9 is given out on the back end, it's not based on the course that you're playing. It's strictly based on other people with the same, around the same handicap index as you on a course of standard difficulty. So it doesn't take into consideration if you're playing the hardest course in Colorado on the back 9. So that's one thing to keep in mind with those 18-hole score differentials and it taking the back 9 of the score that's played or taken, excuse me. So here's a really good example of everyone with different handicap indexes and how playing just the front 9 ends up having different back 9 expected score differentials for the 18-hole. So as you can see here, player A has a handicap index of a 4, and they shot 42 on the front 9, and then their expected score differential is an 8.7. Player B also has a 10 handicap, it has a 10 handicap index, not also. Shot a 42 on the front 9, and their whole 18-hole score differential is 11.8. And then the handicap index for the person that shot has a 16, they shot a 42 as well on the front 9, but their 18-hole score differential is 14.9. So as you can see, each player, even though they have different handicap indexes, shot the same front 9 score. Their expected score differential for the 18-hole score is different. So it does change as you go. It's not going to be the same for each person. And then here we have one where everyone has the same handicap index of 17.1 for players A, B, and C. And as you can see here, they all shot 40s, or A and B shot 47 on the front 9, and on the back 9 they had the same 9-hole differential of 11.4, but player C ended up shooting a 49 on the front 9, and so the back 9 expected score differential is a 13.3. So overall, the 18-hole score differential for player A and B are going to be the same at 21.5, but player C, it's adjusted 23.4. So it does depend, it does change on the front 9, depending on what you shoot, and it does adjust for the back 9.
Yep, just one note there, the expected score would be the same for all players because their handicaps are the same, but the difference here for player C is that front 9-hole differential. Wanted to make that differentiation.
Perfect. And so here's another graph here to show just kind of those changes with the 9-hole score differentials and the expected. So course rating and slope, round 1 on course A, you have a 9-hole score of 42 versus a 9-hole score of 50 on course B, or round number 2. So your 9-hole score differentials are going to look a little bit different. So 5.6 and 11.5 plus the expected score for a 15 handicap player on the back 9, dependent on each course, which calculates out different 18-hole score differentials that are calculated towards your handicap index.
Yeah, the main thing here is that it doesn't matter what course you're playing on the front 9. Any expected score is going to be obviously calculated based off the score of standard difficulty, which is why there's 9 on both course A and course B.
Perfect. So for 9-hole scores, you will see that there is a notion here, and for the type of score that's posted, it'll be indicated with an N, saying that it was 9 holes. Excuse me, 9 holes. Then you'll be able to see the score is obviously not going to show the full 18-hole score because you only played 9 holes. But what you will see is the course rating and slope, and then what your differential is for the 18 holes. And so any when 9-hole scores are played, when 9 holes are played, the scoring record will display the following. So the 9-hole adjusted gross score, the 9-hole course rating and slope, and then the 18-hole score differential. So then you have the different score types here. So H would be home, which is any home course that you are associated with or a member at for your club, or if you, like I said, belong at a club. Away is any course that you play that is not considered your home course in admin or in gin. And then competition will be any score, like if you haven't played a CGA event, it'll most likely have a C and an A next to it, saying that it was a competition at an away course for you. N equals any 9-hole score combined with the expected score to produce an 18-hole score differential. Prior to 2024, it'd be 2 9-hole scores combined, but moving forward, you're just going to see an N there with the 18-hole score differential. P will be a penalty that's applied to your score. League, which is coming soon. I'm not sure, have we been told when the league would be active yet?
Nope, not yet.
Cool. Making sure I didn't miss that. And then E is an exceptional score applied to your scores if deemed needed. But 9-hole scores, another one here. So you can see down at the bottom, or any of the ones that are starred, you'll see all the different types there. And then you will see that, like at the bottom here, you have the NCH, which is a 9-hole score. That was a competition score at your home course. So yes, and so especially like if you see any NA, it's not saying that your score is not applicable to the handicap index. It's just saying that it was a 9-hole score in a way. So it's still being applied and still possibly taken into consideration depending on the score differential. But yeah.
Okay, nice job, nice job. So we do have a couple of questions. We'll start with Wendy's first. Is surgery that indicates a long-term change in ability a reasonable reason to change a low handicap index? Yes. Really, any reason, honestly, but definitely medical. Medical reasoning is always a good reason to change a low handicap index. Yeah. Or should I say any good reason? Medical is definitely top. My knee is hurting, but there's no reason why. Maybe not so much, but okay. Deb, can you clarify why we are addressing 18-hole score differentials when only 9 holes have been played? Yes, So as of 2025, Deb, no longer are 2 9-hole scores combined. 1 9-hole now creates an 18-hole score differential that can affect your handicap index. So one thing you'll see moving forward is that if the course is just a 9-hole course, you'll actually see 18-hole ratings. And that is because if the course is played twice, technically, instead of posting 2 18-hole score differentials, you can just post a 1 18-hole score. Because again, if you do play a 9-hole twice and there's only 9-hole ratings available, it will post 2 18-hole score differentials. So hopefully that helps there. And when is net par used? Good question. So this has been kind of clarified here by the USGA recently, but really when a course, it's at the committee discretion at this point. And when 8 holes are played, and the reason why a 9th hole can't be played, net par can be used to complete that 9th hole to give that person an acceptable 9-hole score to be posted. That's reason 1. And reason 2 is if the committee deems necessary, along with the course, if a hole is out of play due to maintenance, and it is deemed out of play, the score for that hole can either be net par or the expected score by leaving it blank. So those are really the 2 options we have now for net par. Hopefully that helps.
And then one last question that was on here was, if a player posts a score in GIN and they didn't play the last 2 holes, you'll want to post the score hole by hole 1 through 16, and then you can leave the last 2 holes blank if you're posting directly in GIN. You don't need to have a filled in score for those last 2 holes, because the system will automatically fill in the last 2 holes to create an 18-hole handicap index. And I wish we had a way to tell you what that magical filling in is and how it does it, but we don't have any access or idea of what that equation is that fills in the last 2 spots, if that makes sense.
Correct. And then one from Larry, I've noticed players with a mix of 18 and 9-hole rounds. The 9-hole rounds are often in the mix with the best 8 differentials for their index. Yes. So I have seen this as well. As you noticed in my scoring record, I think all of the 9-hole rounds are in my handicap index calculation. And that's what they're saying is they're going to continue to tweak this new tool, if you will, based off of the more scores that it gets, the more they can refine how, the exact calculation and, the computations in the background. So I have noticed this as well. It's just something that the USGA is keeping an eye on because they've noticed it as well, which is good that they know about it. But as of right now, there's no action. So just kind of keep an eye on it. Because one thing you also see too is if there's a frequent player of a short course, par 3 course, those, since it was newly introduced last year, those details on the back end are constantly being adjusted as well, because initially there was some people getting capped very quickly if all they did was play a par 3 course for 5 times. So just keep an eye on it. The USGA knows about it, and so they're just trying to make the best conclusion based off of the data and not based off of other things. So good question. And then the last one before we continue, we have about 19 minutes left here, is how do you decide between the 2 options of hole not players, net par, or expected score? So that is actually up to you and the committee. So, and also the golf course. The way that it is worded now, you would use net par for the competition and expected score for score posting purposes. You can do it that way. Or if you do decide to use net par, you might as well use net par for both the competition and for score posting purposes as well. The good thing is there's no incorrect way to do it, but there you do want to make sure that everybody knows once the decision has been made whether or not you're using net par or the expected score. Kind of a gray area answer there, but just kind of relaying the message. So hopefully that helps there, Deb. Okay, so scoring record maintenance. This is the next topic. We have 3 left, and I'm pretty certain we can get through them all. Okay, so posting your score. Again, just kind of want to reiterate that it is very important, not only for the player to see what their handicap index is the next day, but also for the PCC to post the score the day of play. I know sometimes posting, lots of scores that day is tough, but Golf Genius tries to make things a little easier. And, tournament management softwares, for those of you who don't use Golf Genius, they try to make it easy to post a mass amount of scores all at once, knowing that it is very important to get those posted to see if there is any PCC adjustment to be applied. And the PCC is kind of what makes the handicap index a trademark logo now, or a trademark handicap. And so that's kind of that there. And then again, PCC, you'll notice this for viewing purposes today. It has its own column. I kind of mentioned it before, but this is where 2 actual PCCs were adjusted or were applied. And this was recently here at Poppy Hills. Not my best efforts that day, but also new course, and I was in shock and awe. So that's where we're going to blame that on. But yeah, so editing a score. This is going to be one of the duties that you do 90% of the time. Adjusting a score. Hey, you'll probably get a call saying, hey, you posted the score in the tournament and I accidentally posted it again because I didn't know you were going to post it. Okay. Or it's going to be, I shot a 75 instead of shooting, 73 or whatever the case may be. Editing scores and or deleting scores is going to be one of your main duties. And it's very easy to do. So I just want to show you how to do it. So the first thing we want to do is go into the player's account by clicking on their name. So you click on their name and you'll be taken to their score history. You'll be taken to handicap management by default. And so that will only show you the previous 20 scores. But to see a complete record of the player's scores, you want to go to the score maintenance tab. You will not only see the 20, which are indicated by the yellow squares here for their scores, but you'll also see any score that this golfer has ever played since when they first started in GIN, which is pretty nice. And if you were to go needing to go into and edit and or delete one of these scores, you would go to this far right-hand side here next to the score that needs to be edited, and you either click the delete button or edit. But in this case, we're not going to delete it. We just need to edit it. So we click the edit button, and this is the screen that you will see. Okay, so you can edit almost everything here. So you can edit the date played, you can edit the score type, you can edit, in this case, the score was posted hole by hole. So you can edit any of the holes scores here. You can edit the course played, you can edit the tees played as well. The one thing you cannot edit is the 18 or 9. So the main one that I get is if a 9-hole score is posted as an 18-hole score using, a 9-hole using an 18-hole rating and slope, you cannot go in and change that. You actually have to delete that score and post it as an 18-hole score using an 18-hole slope and rating. Okay. And once you're done, click Edit Score, and you're done. Pretty easy. But again, that, from my experience, that is what a lot of people spend most of their time doing, either posting scores for their members and or adjusting them once they're posted. So, and then also too, if you're unaware, the new thing is golfers can actually go in and edit their statistics only on the day the score was posted. Or yeah, so they have up until that evening to adjust their statistics if they need to. And once that evening is gone, unfortunately, they won't be able to touch that score. After that, the score will just have to be re-entered and the first score would need to be deleted if somebody forgets to add their statistics. Okay, all right, Maddie.
Yes.
Second to last, penalty scores and adjusting a handicap index.
Perfect. So the rules of handicapping include safeguards to make sure that a player's handicap index accurately reflects their demonstrated abilities. So there's a few things here PCC calculation, ESR calculation, which is an exceptional score reduction, and then hard cap and soft cap procedures. There are rare instances where the handicap calculation and safeguards do not accurately reflect their demonstrated ability, and it'll be up to the handicap committee to take consideration and take action. So here are some reasons for applying a penalty score. So if the reason was valid and an acceptable score is still discoverable, that score will be posted. And this is for when the player fails to submit a score from an authorized format of play. And so yeah, the first one, if there was a valid or an acceptable score is discoverable, that score will be posted. If there was no valid reason and an acceptable score is discoverable, that score will be posted. If the score is not discoverable, a penalty score may be posted. And then in a more serious case, such as repeated failure to submit acceptable scores, the community has discretion to apply additional penalty scores or reset the player's handicap index or consider other disciplinary procedures.
And also too, this is applying a penalty score, a procedure for doing so, whether you have a 3-strike policy or an immediate penalty score. It should be written in your policies and procedures just so one person doesn't feel singled out of the group. This way everybody knows, and if somebody does need to get a penalty score and they meet that criteria that you set forth, then they know, they know what they're getting. So just a recommendation there.
And so when applying that penalty score, you will go to the player's account in admin portal, go to post a score, and then from there you will select the total score button, date played, score type, which you select penalty for, and then penalty method, how many holes, 18 or 9, penalty type, high or low, and then post the score. So the handicap committee should decide the appropriate penalty score based on the intent of the player and can select a high or low penalty score. This will duplicate the highest or lowest score differential respectively found in the player's most recent 20 scores. So correct me if I'm wrong, but if you select the high, I believe that it will take the high and select that and apply that to the last 20 scores, the score differential, and then low would be the low score differentials.
Yeah, so what it does is it actually posts a penalty score equal to the highest score differential if they click the high option as a penalty score, and or if the low option is selected, it'll actually post a duplicate of the lowest score differential in the golfer's bank account.
So adjusting a handicap index. When the handicap committee can adjust a player's handicap index to ensure that it reflects their demonstrated ability. In doing so, the handicap committee should consider all available information relating to a player's demonstrated ability, which includes the player's scoring potential, any handicaps previously held by the player, whether the player is an improver, a steady player, or a declining player, and then injury or illness. So when a handicap review has been completed, so someone comes to you about someone's handicap index, you can create or start that handicap review. And so now you're at the point that you feel like you need to adjust a player's handicap index. So after that review has been completed, the committee can adjust a player's handicap to better reflect that player's demonstrated ability based on the results of the analysis completed. So any adjustment must satisfy the following criteria, which is a minimum of 1 full stroke, either up or down, and except in exceptional circumstances, only increase a player's handicap index by up to 5 strokes above their low handicap index. And then there's no adjustment as to how far downwards a handicap index can be adjusted. So on that right-hand side, you see the 31.5 can either go up to 33 or down to 27.8. So when we are adjusting that handicap index, we are in the main account, you'll see handicap management, which is the first one that populates. when you pull up someone's account, and then you'll see modify handicap index, modify low handicap index, withdraw the handicap index, or any special updates. So with that, looking at the low handicap index, if for some reason you're wanting to modify their low handicap index, you'll click on that modify low, and then you'll be able to put in what you want that low handicap to get moved to, either higher or lower. And the reason that you do this is if someone were to come to you with an injury, or they're just coming out of an injury and they're not playing to their potential, you have the ability to modify their low, and move it up a couple points, for a specific amount of time, which I believe is 6 months is the maximum that we usually do, or it doesn't matter. Is it a year?
So the maximum is 365 days.
Okay, 365 days. But it's up to you and your committee to decide how long you want to keep that low handicap index for. And then once that time hits, you have the ability to go back in and either see if that player has adjusted to where you thought they were going to be, or you can make another adjustment after reviewing how the season went or how their rounds posted went. And so you'll set that expiration date. And then from there, you will set it within the system.
Perfect. And one recommendation that we always give to people is use the player's demonstrated ability after the injury or after whatever case may be, to determine what their handicap index is. We always like to make decisions, or always recommend making decisions based off of data versus, even though whole numbers might be nice and easy to do, we always recommend to use the player's actual score data and use the math in the table, in the rules of handicapping that we saw earlier in the presentation, to adjust somebody's low or current handicap index. So you can always give us a call and we can help you walk through that process. Any questions there? I know that one was pretty easy, pretty simple. Some clubs give out penalty scores more often than others. Some hand them out like Tic Tacs. Some don't hand them out at all. So it's really up to you and your club, but our recommendation is to at least have it in writing on how to achieve one, so somebody doesn't feel singled out. Okay, so Larry, we'll take care of this real quick. Please recap 9-hole score. Player complete 7 or 8. Most don't post. Did you suggest net par to complete or best not to post? So the golfer must complete at least 8 scores, and then it would be up to the committee's discretion to determine if they should use net par for that 9th score. If a golfer only plays 7 holes, that score is not postable for score posting purposes. Okay, all right, let's see. We have 5 minutes left with our last topic here, performing handicap reviews. So we do have a couple slides here, but I will make them brief, even though there is a lot of wording here. Okay, so if you didn't know, part of the duties of a handicap committee is to at least perform one review of their league at least once a year, right? And it can also be conducted on individual players at any time. But kind of the recommendation from the USGA is to do it once a year just to make sure everybody's kind of playing up to par, if you will. And then the handicap committee should pay attention to particular scores, such as ones that have hit safeguards, ESRs, soft cap, hard caps, which kind of indicate there's something going on with the golfer potentially. Although a lot of people early on in the season end up getting soft cap, but as the season wears on, they kind of play out of those caps. So really what you want to look for are the ESR golfers. And so there's lots of information available to you, but some of the things you might want to consider looking at, which can also be found on the committee guide, in the back end of the committee guide, should I say, is how did the player perform in competition? Did the player have an illness or injury this year? Kind of going back to what Wendy was asking. Are scores being posted in a timely manner, or are they all being posted at one time, just so it happens to be right before a competition? or did the player have any WHS safeguards applied, kind of as I mentioned before. And the review can involve the analysis of all kinds of things. Here's kind of a list, but here's ones that I frequently see. This one is a new one, a percentage of acceptable scores from 9-hole rounds. Because again, Larry kind of brought it up earlier, the 9-hole rounds. Not for some, not all. They do seem to provide, to spit out lower 18-hole differentials for now, but we'll see if that slowly adjusts over time. So nothing to be kind of scared of, but just kind of keep your eye on there. The player's scoring record history, that's always a good one to take a look at. And then my favorite one that I always get calls about every year is the comparison of average score differentials between competitive and casual rounds. Usually you can definitely spot, somebody who is trying to game the system based on how they play in competitive versus non-competitive rounds. As my predecessor used to say, Jerry Brown, cheaters will always find a way to cheat. So, so there's a bunch of reasons and different types of tools we have available to us. The new tool that some of you might be aware of is the Handicap Review tool, which is just a button now in the player's account that will actually look at the golfer's score history for you. And when it does that, it'll actually either set a high or a low flag based on the scorer's current differential as to what their expected score differential would be. So this is also where the expected score comes into play, or the expected score differential would come into play. And it also takes a look at frequency of play. How frequent is this golfer playing? Is this golfer playing every day? Or is this golfer playing once a week, 2 times a week? What is going on here? And so based on the amount of flags and the analysis that the system does, the system will then provide a recommendation either up or down at a minimum of 1 point as to what a modification should be based off of the 365-day history of this golfer. Okay. And again, this is all done for you. It's one touch of a button and it'll run, right? And so for instance, if there's a downward adjustment recommended, I won't read everything to you, but depending on the amount of scores, the more flags that'll be needed to trigger a downward adjustment in this case, right? And then conversely, an upward adjustment, again, the more scores that the golfer has, the more flags that'll be needed, which is also different from the low. See, the minimum for a low is 2 and the minimum for a high is 3. Or should I say upward adjustment is 3. And then also what the system does is once it runs once, if an additional adjustment needs to be applied, it'll keep running until the system configures that or figures out that it no longer needs to adjust. So again, any handicap adjustment or adjustment to a handicap index must be 1 point, but this will keep running until it can't run anymore. So it can be 1, 2, 3, 4 points based on the data that's in the golfer score history. All right. And so this is a good tool to use because then, if somebody does, need a review, you can say this was all done based off of the tools that the USGA has and data versus, somebody feeling singled out or things like that. And some of you might be asking, hey, where do I go to find this tool? And I have a pretty cool update here in a second. And I know we're 1 minute over, but we're almost done, I promise. So if you go to the player's scoring record and you go all the way over to this new tab called Handicap Review, and then you click Run. And look at this here. I ran this twice, once at the end of last year and then once early on this year. And good thing for me, no adjustment will be applied here. But again, with this being kind of a new tool, the USGA is constantly getting feedback from not only us, but golfers, a small subset of golfers. And by small, I mean like 10,000, 20,000 golfers around the world. And constantly updating this to kind of help not only explain what a high or low flag is, but also explain kind of how it's done, things like that. So, but the good thing is once you run a handicap review, it'll always every review that you run will then be kind of time-stamped and saved in the golfer's handicap review history. So, and then this will be where the adjustment is. And then if the golfer or if this tool does spit out an adjustment, it would be up to the committee for final approval if they want to proceed with that adjustment or if they just want to, you know, not do anything with it. So it's always up to the committee whether or not they want to proceed with anything. Okay. And then finally, or should I say kind of the second part to that portion is we just got an update on April or the first week of April, maybe the second, a tool or the review tool will be expanded to be able to run it or click a button once and run that review tool for the entire club at one time. And so essentially you'll see that same view, but instead of one person's account, you'll see a name, what the recommended adjustment is, how many low or high flags they have, and things like that. So we kind of saw what it looks like and how it works, but anticipate more updates here in the month of April. At the beginning of April, you'll see kind of how to videos and things like that from the USGA, and we'll probably send out something in our next Club Insider about it once we get some more documentation. So, and then finally, the reports that are available to you. There's all kinds of reports if you're new to the admin portal. This is where you will find them, right? So if you log into the admin portal, click on the reports, and under my reports, you might not see anything, and that's okay because that's not where they live. These are reports that you have saved and have used in the past. In order to see a list of all the reports that are available to you, you're going to want to click that templates tab, and then it'll give you a giant list like this. Okay, and then one additional one that'll come out once the review tool is in place for the entire club is you'll see a handicap review history report that you can pull. But so again, this is a giant list, and I'll let you go through all of them at your own time, but here are a couple that we recommend. The cap golfer report, just to see those golfers that have some sort of cap, whether it be a low or a high or a hard, sorry. An exceptional score reduction report. This will show you all the golfers who have had an ESR throughout the season. And handicap index course handicap report. That's not one that really helps for a review, but this is one that is run by pretty much every club on a weekly, if not bi-weekly basis. Handicap index history report. And this is important for the most improved golfer report, because if the golfer was not active when you started the most improved golfer report, you can check to see when their golfer or when the golfer did have an active handicap index for golfers, and then you can adjust the most improved golfer report start date as needed. So, but those are four reports that we find that are run a lot by almost every club. So hopefully those help with your intentions there for your league at some point. And then if you ever want any information or want to watch this presentation again, you can certainly do so on our website. And we actually have a World Handicap System hub on our website that we have everything that we know that has ever been published by the USGA almost on our website there for you to either download, read, get to your members, whatever you would like to do. So please visit that if you would like. And finally, those of you who are unable to make our Handicap Index 101 session, we have one more training this year, and this will be next Tuesday, April 1st, and that is not an April Fool's joke, next Tuesday from 10 to noon, and we'll be going over Handicap Index 101. The video from our first session will also be up sometime this week. So really, the material will be the same, but you never know if a couple jokes will be the same or different. So really up to you on that. But before I let you all go, anybody have any last questions or any burning questions they would like to ask? I know we are 6 minutes over, so I do apologize for that, but I do want to make sure that everybody's questions were taken care of today. If you have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Okay. I take it with everybody's silence, it is lunchtime and everybody's thinking about lunch, which I know I am. So if you do have any questions or anything like that afterwards and you let this presentation simmer a little bit, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Maddie, and we'll be happy to answer anything that you have. So I hope you found this presentation beneficial. I know this went a little longer than expected, as I said before. So, but we really want to thank you for your time. So now I would like you guys to go ahead and have some lunch, maybe go play some golf this afternoon, and have a great golf season. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.